2 minutos, en 1 minuto comenzamos.
Una recomendación, por favor, para todos, recordando que en Zoom hay un pequeño demora en la interpretación. Entonces les pido que hablen de manera despacio. Y la interpretación es simultánea, sin embargo, hay que hacerlo de manera despacio por el delay del Zoom. Muchas gracias.
Muy bien, bueno, muy buenos días a todos quienes
Good
están
morning with
por
everybody,
América, buenas tardes
and
a
everybody
los que
that is
están
in
por
Latin America and the ones that are joining in Europe,
y seguramente buenas tardes, noches a quienes están por Asia.
and the
Les
ones
agradecemos
good
muchísimo
afternoon
por
and good night, everybody in Asia. Thank you very much for your participation and your time
para tener esta actividad
that you're
que hoy
dispensing for our activity, which is very important.
director de Estudios, Proyectos e Información de la Organización Latinoamericana de Energía, OLADE. Es realmente un placer para nosotros poder tener esta actividad que es tan importante.
It's a pleasure for me to have this activity. It's very important for us.
Bienvenida a estos expertos para hablar
And I
del
would
tema.
like to invite and welcome all the experts here. Most of our countries, it's very quiet in the sense that we can talk about this blackouts and why are the blackouts in Latin America and all the solutions for this. The origins is a lot of opportunities and happenings. It's very important to annotate them and to avoid them and to find all the solutions that could be found by our governments. I would like to introduce all our prestigious experts that are joining us today. We'll have a look to Latin America, and we'll have a look to all the technical views in Latin America and all America. We will have a join with ACRE, which is a global international opportunity and development. We're also sending a message by YouTube and international. All the questions that you would like to send to all the panel members, please send it by the platform. And of course, all the questions will be transferred to all the panel members. Our agenda, we would like to introduce to start this opening of this event. Unfortunately, our main secretary will not be able, Mr. Andres Rebolledo will not be able to join us because he has another activity which will be held in Europe, but he will be, he sends his regards to everybody. Dr. Chen will introduce the opening, and we will have soon the word will be passed to another member. Professor Rodrigo Moreno. Daniel Mestriner from Geneva University. And then Heiko will be also presented. To all of this, we really thank you about your time. We will take some time for what it was belong to our executive and the regulator will give you a brief overview of all the general situation currently going on. Without a doubt, energy is most important. Unfortunately, we only value it in the big dimension when we don't have it. When this phenomenon, when the blackouts appear, it's when you evaluate on what you mean, when it happens, when you have the service interrupted, that's when you really get involved in what's going on and the quality of life on all the development of the country. What it happens to go with the industry and everything working out. Everything is affected really. And the people that is electro-dependent, how serious this involvement is. For all of us that in the world of energy, we understand deeply, but for the people who are not involved, it is very important for us to figure out all the different causes and the situations that currently involve. These dramatic situations, how it affects in a lot. What will be the issues and the solutions? It is very relevant for us that we can have this expert panel. Look, we can have like an academic matrix. This matrix tries to fortify all the agendas, electricity agendas around the world. We would like to have a look in Latin America, a look on Europe, and all over a continent. Why? Because all in these places, we have some solutions and some pathways to solve the issues and the problems, so we can give some answers about this, what's going on. It's very fundamental for us to see with all these experts what will be very about all the information that provide with these experts, this work journey. We would like to list what are the reasons and the consequences of all this, but also the actions that we will have to take to solve all this. We don't like to focus on particular circumstances of any country. We would like to look for general situations, general solutions for all the way. Things that are going on and continue happening. We'll have to have the diagnostic and to see where are we heading on, and also to add some solutions in order to correct the tracks and actions and find out new politics that will be understood and will be fine in order for this to solve. From us, from Olade, it's very important, this kind of meetings, it's very important that we can cleanse in all the people together. In this way, we can also find a way and a track. It's not going to be the same for everybody, of course. All these kinds of misabouts are different on each country, but what we have to do is to find out anything that the way that we will be together looking for solutions for this. All the solutions that we need. I really appreciate it, and thank you very much for Muladi. As we said, I would like to Mr. Chen. Mr. Chen, welcome. Dr. Chen, go.
Executive Secretary of OLAD, distinguished expert, ladies and gentlemen.
Distinguidos expertos en electricidad, señoras
Hello,
y
everyone.
señores.
It's a great honor
Buenos
to
días a
attend
todos.
this event. Theme on Latin American blackout.
Esto es un honor para nosotros participar en este evento.
Extend warm congratulations on the successful convening of this event. and would also like to sincerely thank friends from Latin America for your continued support for GETCO and the GEI initiative.
Queremos agradecer
Electricity
a
is a
Latinoamérica por su
crucial
soporte continuo a
foundation
GETCO.
for human society. Looking back,
La electricidad es una vértebra
platforms
fundamental para la
in
producción
US
humana y la
and
vida
Canada
cotidiana.
left 50 million people in darkness.
Últimamente, en Estados Unidos y Canadá se sumió a la oscuridad con 50 millones de personas y el colapso de la red eléctrica en India que afectó a 600 millones de personas,
highlighting the importance of reliable power supply.
lo que resulta en determinar qué tan importante es el suministro eléctrico seguro. Recientemente, los apagones a gran escala en países latinoamericanos como Chile, Honduras, Argentina, Panamá, Cuba, nos han recordado una vez más que la seguridad eléctrica no tiene fronteras y que la construcción de redes eléctricas resilientes es una prioridad urgente.
International think tank and cooperation platform for energy sector.
Como grupo de reflexión internacional y organización de plataforma en el campo de energía, GETCO se ha centrado sistemáticamente en la seguridad y el desarrollo sostenible de los sistemas energéticos y eléctricos mundiales, guiados por el desarrollo limpio y la centralidad de electricidad y la interconexión global. Promovemos Recientemente, el presidente Sheinbaum propuso el innovar concepto de este tema con la red eléctrica resiliente, digital e inteligente. Pronto publicará una monografía dedicada a este tema. Esto proporciona un nuevo enfoque para integrar profundamente las redes físicas con la tecnología de la información, construyendo redes modernas y inteligentes y de rápida autorreparación. Ofrece nuevas perspectivas y soluciones para abordar los desafíos de seguridad y estabilidad a los que enfrentan las grandes redes eléctricas.
Using the world's most advanced simulation models, identifying root causes and proposing solutions. Today at the seminar,
Hoy día en el seminario, Dr. Feng Limen de GETCO compartirá nuestras conclusiones y esperamos un interesante intercambio de opiniones con todos los expertos presentes.
Strategic partner of GETCO. Both sides have carried out pragmatic cooperation with fruitful outcomes in technical exchange, at conference and events, joint research, and more. At the end of this May, GETCO will send a senior delegation to visit OLAD headquarters in Ecuador and hold a thematic training and seminar on digital intelligent resilient power grids. We warmly welcome your participation. Looking ahead, GETCO is willing to continue strengthening cooperation with Latin America countries to better align grid planning, standard formulation, and emergency response mechanisms, and jointly enhance the resilience and the intelligence of regional power systems. Friends, electricity is a symbol of a modern civilization, and ensuring the safe and reliable power supply is a common goal of all countries. Let us take this opportunity to pool wisdom, work hand in hand, and improve power security in Latin America. Together, we can create a new landscape of a globally interconnected power network for the benefits of Latin American and the people around the world. Thank you, everyone.
Muchísimas gracias, doctor Cheng. Hemos escuchado sus palabras con mucha atención, les agradecemos.
We have listened to your words very carefully. We really deeply thank you for all that. And we also invite everybody for the activity that we're going to have at the end of May. And we will send the details about this meeting all over our network. So the event is opening. and we would like to listen to our panel. So Mr. Rodrigo Moreno will start. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen now. Let me know if you can see this. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much for this invitation to participate in this panel with this all very important panel members. The invitation was to talk about the blackouts, particularly the responsibility and also the resilience of the system. So I'm going to take the next 10 minutes to, in a general way, talk about this concepts of resilience and all the concepts and what would we be able to do in Latin America to avoid this blackouts. So the first thing that Mr. Fitzgerald was saying, and also Dr. Change was mentioning, is the very importance of what's going on in our cities and our countries. Our countries are tremendously affected of what's going on our electric system. And electricity is what we call the engine of modern society. All the quotidian activities, everyday things and activities are related and affected directly of electricity. And of course, of a lack of electricity power. There's a lot of activity related to electricity in our daily lives. And everything in the production of daily means and daily products. Society is a very heavy consumers of electricity. Everything is on a daily basis. It doesn't exist a 100% reliable electricity system. Nonetheless, electricity system fail. Like it happens, it fails because of outside events like catastrophic events, a drought, or endogenous, no maintenance, human errors. This triggers a lot of problems like slowing down this electricity provision. When it fails happen, that's when we feel it. As we mentioned before, when this happens, when this blackouts happens, everybody starts understanding how reliable we are from the systems and rural areas. With all this, very important. Of course, the first impact is on the social things. The metro, the stops in the metro and the electricity due to it works by electricity. Railway, metro, undertubes, they're affected without electricity. Communications, all the poles, all the communication systems and antennas work by electricity, and the backup, even though they have a power backup, they can stop, they can continue serving, but it doesn't last forever. It doesn't last forever. With no electricity, with no communications, you understand, water supplies. The production of other essential products because of the lack of electricity. So the impacts comes economic. The industry will not be able to continue, and this transforms very fast, like a waterfall effect. It has an impact on the political situation. Politics gets affected with all this means, and the society. In the last blackout in Chile, unfortunately, I cannot separate this from what happened recently. There are reports of people dying related to this effect because of these blackouts. People that are electric dependent on the life-threatening devices. Impacts 500 to 600 million dollars were lost because of that blackout in the Chilean economy. The impact of these blackouts, we are very concerned about what's the impact of this blackout among society. On the social chaos that is developed because of this is very important. These are real photos after the blackout in Chile in the 2010. This is what happened on the curfew after 10 p.m. when the army forces were forced to go out to take care and protect all the public and private areas. The right picture, that's a New York blackout. 1967, all the disorders and riots that would happen in New York. Electricity has a lot of electricity on a daily life, and the lack of electricity, of course, evidently produce a lot of disappointments and disagreements on social and a lot of impact on economical impacts, of course. When you see the situation and you start to see the numbers and metrics in a matter of resilience and what happened on our network in Latin America, you understand that there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do. As a matter of fact, Latin America typically requires a superior requirement. Like if you want to see in a metric system, the typical metric we need in this kind of situations, we need to measure this as a matter the time that we can provide how much a client, an average, how much money, how much kilowatts you need. Probably in Europe, it's 1 hour, 100 minutes, more or less 1 hour. But in Latin America, it's exponentially high. At the end of the graphic, you can see and notice that the end of the consumption is far more in Latin America. It's far more than when the countries in Europe. That's what it takes us to reflect about this. And also all the costs involved and related to this. And what are the measures that we should do in order to improve and be better in this kind of condition? To have less blackouts in the region. If we can have some kind of exogenous effect. This is a statistics from the last blackouts in Latin America. And the Y is the length of the duration of the blackout and the number of blackouts. In the last 5 years, there are many blackouts in Latin America. More than 80% of the inhabitants of the population were affected by the blackouts. in the extreme of this quadrant, the ones that worry that concerns the most are the ones that are very deep and involved about this. It's not a matter only of population, but the extension and length of these blackouts, especially the one in Chile and Venezuela in 2021 also, and Nicaragua also. It happened. It's not in this graphic, but it happened. It, it, it took very long in order to recuperate the system. This blackouts happens. Then what we have to think is figure out what are the situations and the measures that we have to control about this. And what we have to do and the measures that we have to take in to avoid this happening and continue and the impact of these blackouts. We will have to figure out what are the causes of this. What is important to understand about these blackouts the causes are very diverse. It's very rare that we only can find one single cause for all of these blackouts. There's a multiplicity of causes. You can see the crossover all over the places, all over the reasons that would happen. And it rarely causes are only unique, as I mentioned. It could be failure of the systems, human failure, system internet connections, the design of the system. Sometimes when it happens into a full complete blackout is the design of the system. There might be several things that might happen and be raised one by the other one, like the system is not connected, or the way the system is connected may take to these problems different causes. There are different layers that are involved in this kind of blackouts that make happen to these blackouts to happen different ways. What do we have to improve to avoid this? We've been working a lot. Shameless, I'm promoting my book that's coming that we can take into this how to improve the resilience of this. And we have offered 3 areas to work with. The active agents of the system should be the first one. The active agents of the systems will become more powerful and endorse the strength of it. The second area is the redundancy of the system. So the redundancy of the system will be better. Then we will try to duplicate the equipments. And we can try to avoid it where some places with these devices, we miss those systems. And the third part is the ability to respond and all the human resources that will be able to respond. We will have to work teams to be able to attack and solve the system as soon as possible. Immediate responses. We're not only working on the resilience on when the system fails, but on the speed to repair them, to find a way that we can repair the system immediately as soon as possible. When we will try the system to work more resilient in the future. With this, I'm going to end. This is a final reflection about this. I would like to share a final concern about this. In this planet that we're going to have a healthy planet, the electric network should be works a long part about this healthy planet, and we have to have this electricity network to work together, and we are trying to connect thermal plants. And the phenomena within the electric system are connected also to this process. It is necessary to endorse this, I mean, to try to work together in order to help to avoid that weight. The planning and the authorities must be involved in this process, working together with all the measures, the associated measures together to install adequate technologies so we'll let the system work as a safe manner. Of course, we need everybody to work together in this, the way that we can work together in the system. We need to be tracking and following all the systems installed. We have to have the systems to control that and understand all the systems related to these blackouts. The typical events that you will be foreseen before, but we will have to comment and continue monitoring this, and we will have a better system, the ones that we want. Nonobstant, we have to work, and the system will work in a better way with political advisors and all the technical means that will be able to better and improve the electricity network. New technology is also involved with this, and also the safe use of energy, renewable sources. That's all my intervention to Jerome. We really appreciate Dr. Rodrigo Moreno for your intervention. Thank you very much for that. A lot is very important. It's the same idea that we started at the beginning when we organized this event, is to have all the countries. It's not a particular thing about all the countries, but we have to understand, all of us, in the book that Rodrigo is offering, we will be able to understand more. Hopefully, if you launch the book, we will have a kind of event that we can get into a copy of those books and understand more of your theories that you're offering and take advantage of this. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rodrigo, for everything. Our executive secretary is with us. Thank you. Thank you for everybody. For everybody and all the people that are with us. I'm sorry, my apologies, because I had an emergency meeting for another thing. Well, cybernetic, but I have a meeting that I was supposed to have in another time. Well, it happens because of the time change of Europe. I had to take into that meeting. Salute you, Geico people all over the world. On the other side of the world, we have a joint force and joint work together with this organization that the advocacy is to build network and networking in this important segment all over the world, but particularly in Latin America. These activities I want to mention, it's part of our core mission. We have to offer good practices at a global way. A lot of actors in a lot of organizations will have to work together as a mission in OLADE. And this theme, what it's been talking about in the last weeks, our organization has to have a space to talk about this matter. Among everything, we have to foresee what's the future, all these challenges, and we find solutions as this activity in Latin America and the Caribbean are going through a very important and crucial time frame. In 2024, it was an evidence of what happened with a very important. We have to start a process of transformation. And from that moment on, the energetic sector, we start again a new agenda, even though it's kind of traditional, but we have to continue going on for it. Different offers in different ways from the offer and the requirements from all the countries. So as a matter of fact, this phenomena that's working on and going on now, we have to take care and attention. It's very important to take care and start this conversation. Thank you very much for all this panel and experts and everybody that's joining us. If we can afford this important challenge, very important for all of us, with the fundamentals elements. Thank you, Gerald, for your time. Thank you very much, our Executive Secretary for OLADE. Now we're going to have Mr. Daniel Metzger of Geneva University is going to take the speech now. Muchas gracias por la invitación. ¿Me pueden oír? Si no les molesta, quisiera compartir una presentación con ustedes para poderles enseñar un poco de nuestra experiencia acerca de los apagones y el restablecimiento. Entonces, quiero darles una pequeña vista de su opinión. ¿Qué son los apagones y las soluciones? Y la forma en que restablecemos las soluciones en nuestro sistema. Es uno de los temas con estudios bastante abundantes aquí en la universidad. Bueno. Todos sabemos cuál es el impacto de los sistemas y los apagones. Los eventos externos, apagones, infiernos, sequías, incendios, todo lo que pasa en América Latina. Muchos incendios en esas regiones. Baja inversión en el aseguramiento de calidad y mantenimiento también ha afectado los sistemas. Todos sabemos desde el punto de vista eléctrico que las líneas de alto voltaje, la sobrecarga, las subestaciones pueden fallar debido a varias cosas y necesitan protección. Y para evitar un apagón completo hay que tratar de cuidarlas. Al mismo tiempo, también el incremento de la demanda de electricidad. Todos sabemos de que si es que hay sequías, hay bajas de la sequía y las centrales hidroeléctricas no pueden proveer suficiente energía y no pueden ser integradas adecuadamente con los sistemas de mantenimiento y térmicos, pueden generar apagones. Ya hablamos de las situaciones de eventos meteorológicos externos, especialmente pueden afectar los voltajes de los sistemas de alto voltaje y medio voltaje. Todo puede afectar los sistemas de conexión. Por supuesto, si no se invierte y hace bajas inversiones en el mantenimiento, si no se hace eso en una región o en los países, pueden ocurrir y afectar directamente para los apagones. Cuando los países dependen de una fuente energética singular, únicamente una planta hidroeléctrica, las soluciones efectivas para este tipo de sistemas son mucho más complicadas. Finalmente, pero no últimamente, el mantenimiento de estas situaciones es más complicado. Hace 10 años teníamos muchos problemas en el Reino Unido. Antes lo teníamos con problemas por electricidad, pero ahora lo tenemos por otras cosas. Esto fue afectado a muchas personas y esto fue convirtió en un gran problema. Entonces, en pocas palabras, ¿qué es lo que hacemos en Italia? Las formas de funcionamiento de las plantas en Italia funcionan en dos fases. La primera fase, la más crucial, es un centro de control meteorológico de manera permanente, lo que hace que nos aseguremos de tener un control de qué es lo que está pasando anticipadamente. Hemos colocado sensores apropiados en toda la red para poder determinar qué es lo que puede pasar durante toda la red. Hemos colocado varias plantas que están colocadas alrededor de Italia. Estas plantas son plantas como externas que están conectadas a estos sensores de tal manera que se conectan simultáneamente cuando ocurren las falencias de este tipo de procesos reportados originalmente por los sensores.
Provide the electricity and the voltage to the non-autonomous power plants.
Lo que sucede es que estas plantas están simultáneamente conectadas para poder proveer energía a los sistemas que no son autónomos cuando se determina que se requieren.
As a consequence, we have the utilization of the so-called restart cores, so a small part of the grids with black start capability. After that, we have the so-called load restoration, which is done
Después
by
de esto tenemos algo que llamamos la baja restauración.
all the electrical island formed by
Todas las islas de electricidad que están conectadas
are interconnected in order to reestablish an integrated and strong power system in terms of voltage and frequency. And then we have the complete load restoration to come back to what we were previously. In order to do that, our Italian transmission system operator, which is Terna, implements a hybrid restoration strategy. They are both relying on a top-down approach. So we ask support from neighboring TSO, France, in principle, mainly France, because we have a big dependence with France in terms of energy supply, and a bottom-up approach, where the service restoration is achieved through bottom restart cores. They could be by hydropower plants, or in the future, the idea is also to provide a black start capability by means of HVDC links, which will be most important, and also battery energy storage systems. Some hints, just I would like to give a brief overview on what we do, because of course the Italian restoration plan is very long, but first of all, one important hint is that can help to avoid blackouts is that the voltage drop is almost always preceded by a small transient phase where we operate a reduced frequency. So detecting that could be a very good indicator by means of automatic load balancer relays to detect that we are going to a blackout. What we usually hear, the re-energization procedure begin only when the voltage is 0 for at least 3 minutes. And very important, this part, we ask some significant grid users, the distribution system operators, because we have several distribution system operators, and the so-called restoration service provider to do some requirements for at least 24 hours. In this case, this is mandatory. They have to provide power supply for the facility, power supply for the control rooms, and very important, the continuity of all the telecommunication systems. I would like to spend also a few words on the test because it is mandatory for the operators I previously mentioned to do some tests in case of blackout. They are extremely important, but we have to keep in mind that this test does not exactly replicate the real condition because of course we need to schedule them so the operators are partially prepared. We need to avoid a large blackout. Of course, the reason is obvious, and we need to limit the extent of the electrical network involved in the test. I would like to switch now from the Italian level, which is very important, but it wouldn't be enough if we do not have a European cooperation, because this is very important, because in the last years, Europe has developed an emergency and restoration regulation, which in my opinion, in our opinion, could serve as a model for Latin America. We were created of integrated regional market, and we have it's a guideline with best practice in terms of managing penetration of renewable grids and technologies for monitoring. This part of the European Union regulation outlines the procedures for emergency situation, including how to restore electricity supplier and manage the system during a blackout. Basically, our restoration plan comes from this emergency and restoration regulation, which has been approved in 2017. I will just say a few aspects, very important from my point of view. There is a very important coordination among transmission system of operators on the Europe. We have a coordination which is called NSOE, which involves all the transmission system operators. And we define in this document, there's a well definition of the emergency procedures and especially training for the distribution and transmission system operators, which has to be involved in the respective restoration plan, Italian restoration plan, French restoration plan, and so on. And this is a good big potential, in my point of view, for Latin America. Coming back to Italy, in the last decade, we had a big issue, and we all know that with the penetration of inverter-based generation, photovoltaic plants mainly, the grid is basically characterized by static generation. And with respect to the past, we have no inertia. We had the inertia one time, which was given by synchronous generators, thermal power plants, nuclear power plants, and so on. With these static generators, we have very good achievement in terms of renewables, in terms of climate efficiency, and so on. But from the electrical point of view, the low inertia means higher frequency, and thus we need to find proper technological solution. Our TSO is slightly, mainly adopting these 5 mainly solutions: the installation of synchronous compensators, the installation of reactors, the installation of static compensators, stabilizing resistors, and last but not least, we are increasing a lot efforts and fundings in HVDC connections. For example, this is the plan for Italy for the installation plan for security in terms of compensators, reactors, static compensators, and resistors. And as we may see, we have a big, a lot of installation in terms of reactive power, which is a very, very big, extremely important for the voltage support. And For what concern the HVDC systems, we are planning big increase in terms of connections. As we can see, these are all new or refurbishment of existing power plants, HVDC power plants, which will be slightly introduced in the next 10 years. And as we can see, this is the Italian region, and we have five submarine cables with high voltage submarine cables trying to improve the connection, because this new kind of HVDC system based on voltage source converters has the ability to provide black start capability. It means that in case of a blackout,
apropiada
the
en el
connection
caso de
can be
apagones.
used
Las
to
conexiones
energize
pueden
the power
solicitar
grid,
para
which has
poder
been
restablecer la corriente en
damaged.
una manera más segura luego de un apagón.
So, in order to summarize our opinion,
Para
is
resumir nuestra opinión
bottom-up strategies
en los
and
diferentes
with the
pasajes,
HVDC link. This is our experience, because
nuestra experiencia,
bottom-up strategies may be
la estrategia está
may be caused by battery energy storage systems, which can cause greater resilience in the event of, for example, of a natural disaster or cyber attack. These local grids can operate independently from central grid and can help the main power system to re-energize it, leading to a faster restoration. So in many situations, this bottom-up approach is much more efficient, especially for rural areas or for some critical infrastructures. And moreover, this prevents the risk of overload. Last but not least, I would just like to spend some few words on HVDC VSC links, because this new technology, which is adopted since some decades, I would say, probably something more, can allow precise control of power and voltage. So it provides excellent control, and this precision is essential during the black start process, where the power must be gradually and carefully introduced to the grid to prevent instability. So this is everything from my side, and I'd like to thank you again for your time, for your invitation, and I hope you appreciated the presentation, and I'm hoping for any kind of question.
Muchísimas gracias, le agradecemos, doctor Daniele Mestriner, de
Muchas
la Universidad de
gracias. Thank you very
Génova.
much, Daniel.
Creo que ha sido una muy buena exposición con
I think it's been a lot of very good explanation
de cómo funciona el sistema en Europa y
how the
especialmente
system works in Europe and especially in Italy.
tres aspectos.
I would like to point out three aspects of the prevention. It's very important
a la hora de poder planificar
how to plan ahead
de la energía, lo que es
what would be the energy
gestión energética en los
and all the
países.
planning in
También
this
sirve
kind of
siempre
countries
el tema del almacenamiento,
and all the storage
herramienta
as a
para
tool
atender este tipo de circunstancias. Es algo que
to attend this kind of circumstances, the blackout. In our region,
se comienza, digamos, de alguna manera,
we are starting about this.
algunos países hace un
In
tiempo
some
que
countries,
se
we are
trabaja,
trying to
pero
start this
de
kind of,
manera,
but it's very slow.
de manera más extendida. Hoy hay países que empiezan a poner en sus políticas, en sus planificaciones, en
Some of the politics are established in our countries to start using this kind of approach of saving and storage.
En algunas regiones de nuestra
In some regions
funciona
in Latin America,
como puede ser Centroamérica,
in Central America, they are working like that.
todavía falta muchísimo por
But
hacer,
there's a lot to do,
en América del Sur, ¿no?
especially in South America. There's a lot to do. There are very good countries that are working out, but with some of the countries that are integrated, but in other they're not.
Tome el uso de la palabra el director Feng Limin de Heico. Así que, por favor.
Now, I would like to Director Gate King de Heico. He's going to take the word now. It's going to be his turn.
Good morning, Chief Secretary Andres Rabiado, distinguished experts, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great honor to present our latest research findings on the causes and mitigation strategies regarding recent major blackouts in Latin America. I'm a doctor. I'm Dr. Li Minfeng from GETCO. Latin America experienced 5 major blackouts since February. Firstly, on February 25th, a nationwide blackout occurred in Chile. Secondly, on March 1st, a large-scale power outage occurred in Honduras and the neighbor countries. Thirdly, on March 5th, 2 power outages occurred in Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. Fourthly, on March 14th, Cuba's national power grid collapsed. Fifthly, on March 15th, a nationwide blackout occurred in Panama. Large-scale blackouts are rarely isolated events. It is caused by multiple low probability and high-risk accidents, which occur simultaneously in a power grid with multiple security risks. The grid force will lead to an uncontrolled chain reaction, resulting in the grid splitting and the system shutdown. We have identified multiple security vulnerabilities in the Latin American power grid, with the foremost issue being insufficient grid infrastructure strengths. Firstly, there are a large number of electromagnetic loops which lead to high voltage system faults and lead to low voltage system. Secondly, our grid facilities need to be replaced. Aging grid equipment usually have a lower load capacity, reduced resistance to faults, and a slower recovery after incidents. Thirdly, regional transmission canals are insufficient. There are weak points in the N-1 and N-2 verification. Fourthly, the international power connections are insufficient. Once a fault occurs, possible to obtain active power and voltage support from outside the region. What's more, it is necessary to enhance power safety production management. For example, operations on working equipment and the system are carried out without the permission from dispatch center. Equipment under maintenance is not physically isolated to operating system. It exists a risk that equipment operates without relay protection. In addition, the protection system needs to be further improved. In the event of a serious stability failure, the power system cannot recover to stability in time, and finally leads to widespread power outages. Lastly, for economic reasons, some market participants are negative to restore the system. So, are there any solutions to prevent power outages? The answer is yes. Chinese power grid is the largest and the most complex in the world, and it avoids large-scale blackout in the past 20 years. We can summarize the prevention and response measurements from 3 aspects. Management is to strengthen the backbone of the grid. Firstly, build an interconnected ring network. For any line failures, power flow can be
出错了，请重试。
diverted to adjacent lines to meet N-1 and N-2 verification requirements. Secondly, decouple electromagnetic loops. Long-distance, high-capacity power transmission relies on 500 kilowatts transmission grids, while local power distribution relies on 220 kilowatts and low voltage distribution networks. high and low voltage networks should not form loops. In this way, decoupling high and low voltage networks allow for utilization of transmission canals. Thirdly, strengthen international power connection. In the event of local fault, active power and voltage support can be obtained from other power grid, thus enhancing their ability to withstand faults. Lastly, accelerating grid facilities upgrades. It is essential to improve the overloading capacity and the fault impact resistance of systems and equipment and increase recovery speed after faults. The second approach is to formulate 25 anti-accident measures.
Recording in progress.
Active defense. Eight categories, including system, power generation, power transmission, power transformation, power distribution, power consumption, dispatching, and environment protection. Totally, there are 144 specific measurements. If fully implemented, accidents can be almost eliminated. The third measure is to reinforce the three line defenses. The first defense line is to use fast and reliable relay protection and effective control strategies to deal with common single fault. The second defense line is to use stable control devices and emergency measurements such as generator treating and load shedding to deal with serious low probability faults. The third defense line is to install out-of-step disconnection devices and emergency frequency and voltage control devices. When the power grid encounters multiple serious accidents, this device will prevent large-scale power outages. The next question is whether these prevention response measures are really effective in practice. For this reason, we conducted a series of simulation studies. Firstly, we built a power grid model that the new energy is widely distributed in North region and the load mainly locates in South region. The North and the South region grids are connected to by two 500 kilovolts and two 220 kilovolts lines. We assume that the North grid power generation and the load are 4,994 megawatts and 2,930 megawatts respectively. The South grid power generation and the load are 3,402 megawatts and 4,879 megawatts. And thus the power flow between North and South will be 2,064 megawatts. At the first second, 500 kilovolts single line is short-circuited and 500 kilovolts double lines trip after 0.1 seconds. Therefore, 2,064 megawatts power flow is transmitted to two 220 kilovolts circuits and make it severely overloaded. Each of the two grids will lose control and collapse soon. If the North power grid trips 28% or more power generation, or the South power grid sheds 20% or more load within 0.2 seconds after the line trips, these two subgrids will quickly recover. In addition, if the South power grid is connected to strong neighbor power grid by two 500 kilovolts lines, the neighbor grid can quickly provide power support and the southern power grid can remain stable. Also, if two additional 500 kilovolts north-south transmission lines are added, the two subgrids can remain stable. If the two lines can be successfully reclosing in 0.1 second, the grid can quickly return to normal state. The above simulation results were verify the effectiveness of the three prevention and response measures. So, are these measures supported by actual engineering cases? From 2001, China began to construct 500 kilowatts power network, and the concept of three-line defense was used widely where stability control systems are applied, such as generating tripping and load shedding. I will introduce three. The first project is the safety and the stability control system of the three gauges power generation and transmission system. It is a typical post-transmission stability control system, including 4 hydropower stations, 4 converter stations, and 500 kilovolt substations. The main purpose is to deal with N-2 force of AC transmission lines and single or double power blocking of DC system. The control measures includes generating tripping and DC power flow adjustment. Since the system operated, it ensured the power delivery of 3 gorgeous hydropower stations. The second typical project is the emergency frequency coordinated control system of East China power grid. The system can modulate DC power, switch pump storage, shed interruptible load to stabilize the frequency at the receiving end. The system consists of 10 DC converter stations, 8 pump storage power stations, 1,500 kilovolt substations, and more than 2,000 strategy consumers. The system keeps running well since it was put into operation. The third typical project is the Northeast Power Grid Broadband Oscillation Emergency Control System. It is to deal with the potential risk of power oscillation and shaft torsional vibration in Northeast China power grid. Layer blackouts, we can consider 3-pronged approaches, fundamentally tackling the problem. Firstly, strengthen a strong grid structure to consolidate the foundation for safe and stable operation of the power system. Secondly, improve the safety production management and ensure the reliable and stable operation of the power system. Thirdly, build the three-line defense and enhance the power system fault defense capability. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias. Agradecemos al doctor Limin de Heiko. Queremos comentarles que a todos los expositores les vamos a estar solicitando las presentaciones, quienes han hecho las presentaciones, porque nos están solicitando y por supuesto las vamos a compartir con todos aquellos que la deseen. Muchísimas gracias. Ahora sí, para cerrar esta parte, le vamos a dar la palabra al ingeniero Alfonso Blanco del Diálogo Interamericano. Por favor, ingeniero Blanco.
Bueno, muchas gracias por la invitación, gracias Fitzgerald por la muy amable invitación. Un saludo a todos los panelistas y realmente un gusto restablecer también el vínculo con una organización que le tengo tanto cariño y que fue parte de mi historia. Así que estoy de último, soy el peor alumno de la clase.
So I'm the worst pupil of the class. Unfortunately, I do not have a presentation, but let me see if we can help you out and we give another kind of focus about this. After all this incredible and magnificent presentation, I'm going to try to give another focus. What I would like to do I think that we lost Mr. Blanco. The engineer, Mr. Blanco, is not here anymore with us. Let's see if he can get reconnected. 1 minute. Let's see if he can reconnect. Talking about blackouts, we just have one blackout here. Oh, I thought that you had this on purpose. It's some counts incredible, but it happened. It's very funny, but I did have a blackout. Incredible. That's the reason that I have to shut off the internet. But now, okay, I was trying to. The region in Latin America is not an exception of all these blackouts and interruptions of services. What I want to, Rodrigo mentioned very carefully and very way, America Latina and the Caribbean are the most powerful indicators of poor electricity improvement. Some of the indicators shows that the region is below the standards of the high developed countries, but it doesn't have that we are not the high developed country to also present the same problems that we have in Latin America. So what we have to explore here is what happened in Latin America and in a better way. In the press, and it's transcended that the very big blackouts that have been working and happening in North America, one of the most notorious and known, not to go that far away, Rodrigo was mentioned in 1970, but let's mention with the electric crisis in California, it was based in 3 fundamental causes that takes the system to the limit. And you put on the table the necessity to put the engineering to safety and precautions. The fact, what happened, it was a very speculative handling of the market because all the agents that were working in that and the lack of investment took them to this crisis, or what happened in 2001. And then it motivated to redesign all the grid and all the system was redesigned in order not to avoid not to happen again. What happened in that experience and what happened in 2001 in California is it was the biggest state in the United States, but it works like a very big market. It's a big market by itself, but it's interconnected among all the states, of course. But what happened that market was not able to control the actual market and what would be happening as a role. And the state was not able to be involved in the full process and in all the planning of the development and the planning of the politics of what would happen in that state. And that was big experience. In that crisis, you can develop that and you can show that the state should be involved. And then we started in 2003 with a massive blackout that it was involved with 50 million inhabitants in the northeast of the United States. And it was involved not only United States, but Canada also. Because there's a connection between Ontario and the states in the north part. An event that happened because of a weather situation and a condition. It was an external event, but then it acts all over as a waterfall on all over the systems and all the mechanisms of the safety measures and all of it as a waterfall event. And it affects all the states. The expositors mentioned that when this starts at waterfall, all the stations and substations are affected. It's a very complex event. It's something that happens through an external event. and then it's a weather and a climate circumstance, but it turns into the local event, and it puts in evidence all the big evidence, what's the big issue and the big problems with all the systems. All the controls were not able to control that in the same operation. Something that it also gives us a lessons on how to control and to learn and to robust the system. And now in that region in the United States is very robust. But now at the table, and there's a problem, there's a commercial issue between Canada and the United States now. And now there's another variable that it's on the table. And what's going to happen on the electricity between these two countries. In 2021, after the long of the storms, it happens a lot. Again, a weather condition will develop into a weather condition that destroys the systems, and it turns into blackouts. In 2021, again, it was a climate situation, but it happened. And in Puerto Rico now, a massive blackout, and in that case was the restoration of the electricity, and they show a lot of enormous blackout of systems to restore the system, to replenish the electricity in that island in Puerto Rico was very hard because of the systems. So again, on the table, you can show that the same circumstances that affects our region, it could affect another large countries. You can observe the same problems in this so-called high developed countries. So it happens in Latin America, but it also happens in these high developed countries. And it happens on large scale economic countries. What I want to focus now, I would like to focus about this. The people evaluates the system only until the problems arises. What I want to speak, and I want to mention about this, I want to mention a special concept about this. The failure cost is always involved in all the operation systems, and the budget always is included. It's one of the most important issues that you have to make on the planning. And there's a lot of skills and professionalization about this, because you have to plan and budget this. And you have to put this on the table. You have to mention what's going to happen, what's going to happen when you have a lack or a blackout. And when you make the design of this grids and this process, you have to include what's going to happen if they fail. In order to avoid this cost and expense of failure, you should be able and aware of that. And so you have to figure out what is behind all the problems and what's going to happen. What are the main issues that causes this interruption of the systems? So what I want to go further on is what are the main causes that may cause this. All the problems should be involved about this. First of all, the problems of the blackouts in the region in Latin America, most of them are not the same, but are distant causes. And all of them were mentioned in the previous presentations. All the problems that have been observed in Latin America and Caribbean, it's all listed on the list that you already mentioned, all of the causes, that possible causes that may be happening. But I would like to highlight the most important ones, the more relevant ones in Latin America. I want to point this out. First, something that Rodrigo at the end of his intervention he mentioned, and he was putting on the table, and it's very important for me. The systems do not go by the changes of the markets and the new technologies. Therefore, the generation all these changes are affected because the high demand, all these changes are happening on technology and lack of technology going by with the same demand. So there's a problem on that. With a large quantity of elements that working together with a low viability, after that, another element, it's the offer does not go by the demand. It's what the offer is less than the demand is going on. There are disbalances on the system. There's a problem of a high demand and the offer do not goes by. That's a big issue. And then it gives risk on the systems. The accompanying of the demand and the offer is not pair. And the problem is that we don't have like an offer, a predictable offer going together. It's very hard, and we're not learning. It's very hard for us to learn how to internalize the large demand that's going on, because we need to figure out what would be the offer. We have to understand that the systems are already in place, but we have to figure out how the demand is coming and be affecting the demand with the offer, like the weather change and all that is affecting the hydraulic power supply and electricity generated by hydraulic systems. But then we have to understand that we have a lot of prediction and ability to foresee this in the future. But now we have to figure this out. And the infrastructure, the transmission infrastructure they have not go by either. And the evolution of technology. We have some systems are very good at offering, but the distribution systems is not good enough to support that at the same level. So you have a lot of offer, but you don't have the ways to transport electricity. The systems and stressed out by the large demand, but without the means of transport the electricity. And we don't have the redundancy, and there's a lack of redundancy in order to provide enough transport of electricity through the actual infrastructure. And the third one, we have to start knowing and start working with more sources that would answer and respond to these systems. And we have to get out of the hydrological system, and we have to migrate for other systems. We have to use the new technology, the new generation, the new energy should go out. We need more planning for this. We have to understand these new systems. We have to make more planning. We have to study how to improve the operation in Latin America. And we have to internalize that. This variable should be understood, and we have to understand that these are now here. We are with new systems. Uncertainty are far more than what we are. Also, the governments do not answer immediately how to invest and how to solve these issues as fast as the development is going on. So the political needs to invest, the politicians, the countries that need to do some laws to approve this, but they are very slow to do so. In this new junction, it's very important, and it start affecting, and now the systems are affected because lack of decisions. I have to put at the table again. We have observed similar situations that they have not arrived to this stress. Brazil started in 2021, have an a large severe problem. One of the biggest droughts in the last 20 years. and the system was supported in Geneva. It was saying that the interconnected systems will be able to support. They were supposed to be working very effectively. Rodrigo was saying, he was saying the interconnection was supposed that interconnection worked very well, but it did not work the same in Uruguay. At the beginning of 2020, and the downdraft was very strong, and interconnection, the interconnection worked also because of the offer. But it didn't work that well because the offer was not controlled enough. In Ecuador, the case was very different, very bad in Ecuador. Hydraulic situation was very compromised. The interconnection then the work was not going to be able to work together because it was interconnected with a country that had the same issues. I mean, it was not able to work because the other country that was supposed to be interconnected was having the same issues that Ecuador had. So in order not to reach this stressful situations, you were supposed to have some different ways to answer this. When you reach this kind of stressful situations, what you want to avoid in general terms, without avoiding this stress situations that might happen in general blackouts in different states, what we have to do is to go together the demand and the offer in order to go together and go side by side. Now let's see what are under my point of view, what would be the things that we have to put on the table about this, what we have to do in order to improve this. The first, something that comes from the first presentation of what happens in North America is the planning. Planning is a necessity, is a must. Planning is more sophisticated every day. You don't have to start. It's not only a matter of extending the demand and the curves of the demand. What we have to do is to do something extra. Thermic power supplies is not enough. We have to understand the water supplies. We have to understand the thermic, the sun. We have to understand all the sources, how they complement each other, and how can we integrate both to the backup system so we can continue as an effective way, as a general idea, to support all the systems. And we can, everyday ideas, we have to continue on this. Every day we have to incorporate more sources. And so today, planning is a must. And we cannot pretend that the market will be able to respond an action, a very assertive action, in a very similar situation of what happened to California in 2001. Today, with the new systems, what we are observing, it's very important. Planning is more necessary. The other element is that we have proof that the market is in markets that are profoundly integrated, the systems, they are not correlated in different sources of offer. That integration works very good. And then the resilience works perfectly. So the work, the capability of go deeper into finding out the sources, electricity sources, and we can combine this kind of each country, so you can support and make a backup for each country when you develop this kind of protocols, to finding out what will be the best way to support as a backup. And you can continue something that you have right now as a market use. Our region has to go into that, so we don't have to interconnection market only, but we have to find another sources to combine this means, especially in Latin America. We need a very profound integrated market, not only in each country, like in the South, column only, but in the North always. So all of them be together, but understanding what would be the backup offers. Another point for me, a very crucial point of me, is to include better technologies on the grid, on the distribution systems and the technologies. We have to go together and improve that. There are so many technologies now that are available right now, and we need to study them. But we need to modernize these technologies. We need to improve this kind of network. Of course, there are so many problems of obsolescence in the grids, but you have to change that, and you have to modernize that, and you have to improve them. And something that we have to talk about this, and we have to improve the distribution systems. And then you have to have the resources, the economical resources, to answer to these issues. This new requirement, I did not get into it very deep, but the renewable resources are far away from the consumption centers, and of course the networks requires a lot more to be very robust in order to bring the power from the long far areas from the consumption sites, and also the technologies to generate the generation technologies. Some of the technologies presented here that they are not rotative systems are also issues that you have to put on the table, and you have to understand all of these elements. But there are many others that might be put on the table, but for me, these are the ones that you have to understand, that there's a lot of investment that you have to figure out. For me, there's something that you have to consider, and there's more for integration and consideration about how we're not going to be able to avoid the blackouts. Thank you very much, Alfonso. We did not ask everybody to have a presentation. We were supposed to have just some more talk about that. If we have some questions about this, there's a little time now, but if you have anybody want to make a question. There's a difference among some countries from the generation and what the final consumer is paying. We have explained that you have distribution, transmission, generation. Of course, the expenses of maintenance included, of course, but in much of our countries, data structure, that cost structure goes to the final user. In the sense, in our countries, many of our countries, with subsidies or some political decisions, how do you handle the final process? In some of the countries, the cost is far more than what the final user is paying. And then at the end, the network and the energy system is affected because of this. What can we comment about this? From your expertise, what would be your comments about this kind of situations on the final cost? What would be your suggestions about that? If someone can raise their hands and make a comment about this. Okay, Rodrigo, let me answer about that. I raised my hand, yes. Yes, Rodrigo, thank you. What you mentioned is very interesting. It's something that we're actually living in a lot of countries in our region. And it has to do with what you're saying. There's a pressure to keep lower rates at the end. Even though there's a lot of investments required in order to strengthen the distribution system, in order to modernize the system, you have to do it. But now, if you don't pay for that, the benefits associated to this better and modern network, in the long term, even though you're not able to see immediately, if you strengthen the network, you have safety, the provision of electricity is safe. But even though you're not being able to notice that immediately, but at the end, when you see a very more strengthened, robust network and grid, the equilibrium is better and it's more efficient, of course. The system is more efficient. Nonetheless, it's a long-term benefits that you can notice immediately, not at the instant. So when you make the investment, you don't notice that right away. But when you notice immediately on the rate that you increase because you need to increase investment, and you need on the rate that is increased because you need to improve the requirements, then it's very hard for these countries to show that. And it's not very easy for the countries to show that the investments is required, therefore you need to increase the rates. So now it's very hard to do that. So the way is to focus and try to focus the benefits on the long term. We have to make and communicate that we need this investment is due now in order to have a long-term solution. And sometimes you fall into this trap that keeping the low investments just to the edge and not to the top. We are saying that we're doing fine, but we are not, because we avoid to increase the rates, the final rates. But then at the end, it goes to the end, and it goes to the problems at the end, because if you don't invest today, you're going to have a problem in the future. The energetic politics and the cycles of each government and the necessities of the system have to be on more synchronicity. So the advantages of the governance, because of the periods and short periods, are not feasible to continue see them in the long term. The problem is with the politicians, they have to short the periods. And then in the long term, you see the consequences in the long term. Without the synchronity of the politicals and the technical world, they need to talk more about this in order to continue long-term politicians and long-term decisions. Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Alfonso, you raised your hand? Yes, I think so. There's a relationship. This is like a bill on a storage. It's like a warehouse balance, right? What it costs to produce on one side, what is not covered by the tariff is covered by the state. And at the end, what the state does is only puts in what is the edge, the limit, in order to continue giving the same service, what they think it's the same service as the required service. What they need is, it's very hard for them to understand. At the end, it deteriorates what is the technical operation, because they're not investing enough. To replenish what is the obsolete material, and the electricity whereabouts are not replaced. And there's a deterrent, and it happens because the dephase of this, they are not investing as soon as they require that. Even the state is putting some in by the subsidy input, it does not solve the component that you have to really put more. in order to modernize the system. So any situation where there's a deface on the tariff or the end tariff, it's a scenery, very proclived scenery that it will happen at the end, that it will not work out. It doesn't mean at the end that it's a unique condition, a necessary condition, but you have to think about it. You will have to wait and figure this out, yes. The system will be debilitated because in the long term, you are not obtaining and recuperating what you need in order to modernize the system. Thank you very much. I have another question here. What is the most challenging matter on the regional interconnection? What is the most challenging situation here? There are several elements here. The infrastructure, reach. The infrastructure, the physical infrastructure is one of the top things that we are not able to cover. That breach, I think that may be the easiest one to invest and control that. In some cases, there's lack of infrastructure among the countries, some regulations, some environmental issues on the interconnection. In Colombia and Panama, the complexity among these two countries, the physical interconnection is difficult, but the other element that will be the more weight among this is the decision, the requirement among the markets that will be integrated. Real markets, the market that can share and combine with straight rules, especially that among all of them, the rules are clear and crystal clear among the two markets. It's like the Central American markets are working more than that, and the rules are clear. In Latin America, they're not. The lack of this consolidation, the initiatives, sub-regional initiatives that are not already placed in the table. And then you will be able to interconnect all the fields and all the states, but it's lack of rules. We've been working and moving forward a lot. But sometimes it's not recognizable how important is the integration of the regional interconnection, how important is that, like the national projects. The importance about binational projects will be very important for them to understand how important is the two countries working together in sometimes. And also the external politicians have to understand and put the rules among these projects, and they will endorse this. It's very important that you will have to understand that both countries should work together in order to have to share their experiences and have the projects going on for the new steps in order to integrate the binational integration, and at the end, the long integration, it's to be relevate the relevance. It's like we saw in the examples on Europe, all interconnected countries and how well they work. But now we will have to figure out down here how important is it to be working together in Latin America. With those answers, there are some answers to the questions that are coming down here in the chat, but Also, it's very important to figure out and to eliminate how well they're working in Europe with all the integration of all the countries. We have to figure out how we work together in order to have the integration and the countries to integrate it together into these main issues. Let's see if we have one last question. Something about the public decision makers. What would be the public decision makers that would be able to, what we have to do in order to obtain more infrastructure and more investment? As you mentioned, it's very important about this. And also it's very important to obtain the resilience. The question is not for anyone, but how important is to work with this out? That would be the last question. What would be the political decision that will involve to increase the resilience? What would the governments do in order to increase this? I think that the public politician decision makers is very relevant is to start a politic. Sometime that you start and you have defined in your long-term planning into that sector and you determine that where are you going, where are you heading, what are the expansion and what is your planning, on distribution and transmission, that's the first politics. I mean, that's the decision-making politics in your country. When you start doing that, then they have the certainty in order to invest into that. Then you figure out what are the necessities in that country for that planning to be accomplished. And what will be all the planning and the environment, the law environment in order to continue. And then you have the regulatory affairs very defined in order to have certainty and legal certainty, legal insurance in order to invest, to accomplish what the states are offering, the law and the lawful state. It's a main principal condition in order to continue and invest in a country when you figure that all the rules and laws are stated there. Another means of political public decision makers is to endorse what the processes are, and then and the specific politics in order to promote this kind of process. When you have to open up and you show the requirements, and then you will show in each country what would be the mechanism to invite people to invest and what kind of investment is required to increase infrastructure, transmission, and production in order to develop this kind of investment. But opening the business environment and giving the right rules into the environment and to this country in order to habilitate investments from the private sector. This kind of actions in 3 lines are what I think that it should work. That's a package of political party decisions that should be done. Thank you. Rodrigo? I would like to add one element into that for what Alfonso just said. It's also about the markets. What is the most important thing that I would like to mention, and the first thing that I would like to pass as a message, is that decarbonization of the electric sector is not going to change if we do not modernize the network and the grid. It's that simple, and it's not feasible without it. The renewable energies and the nature, if you want to do this and to put into the demand, they have to change intelligence technologies. The cables and everything should be changed, and new technology has to change in order to modernize the operation, transmission, control, and everything. So this is the first step. How can you do this and the modernization and this investment and technological investment? And Alfonso was saying about planning, and I think it's a very valuable point. The first thing is the market. Market should be aligned on all the regulatory mark. Then you have to offer the right incentives. And the key point is that you have to align the private incentives with the public incentives. So the markets and the solutions for these markets in Chile, they've been working for this for 45 years. It's since the 80s. And the markets are not answering to a total different market. Then they have to understand and think how this new market are going to be able to open and start in order to, again, align the decision in order what the state is willing to do, but you have to align it to do that. And that's a very important element that you have to consider, because it's not only a transmission. No, it's not only transmission. Most of the things you have to be planning ahead. Not everything can be planned, of course. Risk-taking and the incorporation of new politics and rules, of course, but then we need the market to figure out, to understand the market, how it's going to be developed. Thank you very much. I would like to thank everybody for all the information. If there's nothing that much, thank you very much. The forum is open. It's been an incredible interchange. I hope that we can reach the initiative, objective, and this necessity, and everything that you have to do to accomplish this. I will be expecting for the presentations, and I would like to receive that in order to share with all of them. I think that this attempt that we will not stop here, and we have to continue talking and interchanging information for us. And we need to have more support from the government, from the academy, and we need firm intervention from the private sector. Action, we have a homework to say that there's a lot of things that we have to profound and go deep into, and we have to interchange privately in a long time, not too short, but we will have to continue sharing this. Hopefully this is useful for our countries so we can face this. As we stated at the beginning of this presentation, no country is without problems like it's happening. It happens, and you have to have the prevention of this, and you have this mission in order to avoid this to happen in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you for opening your time and your agendas. Hopefully you will be able to share all these experiences. Thank you very much with everybody on the panel, on audience that were here. I hope that this encounter will be defended. Thank you very much with everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Recording